We often say that taking psychedelic substances scrambles our perception of the external world. But there's a big insight waiting in there that often gets overlooked. Otherwise, it could have profound consequences, even without imbibing them. If you took a sufficient dose of LSD, for example, and stared at a wall, you might at some point see it swirling, changing colors, or even melting and becoming different objects. What is clearly not happening is that the LSD is physically manipulating the actual external wall. One person operating under the influence of psychedelics does not affect the reality of all of the sober people sharing the same room. But that should have already been quite apparent. We then often operate under the belief that the wall is really out there and remains unchanged by whichever substance a person looking at it happens to have ingested. But this second view is that the drug effectively forms a filter, coloring and mutating the wall like the person was wearing tinted sunglasses with warped lenses. It seems like there is still someone who is looking through a distorted filter at a real world, and that the drug simply provides that filter. But this isn't right either. What is actually happening, and this could be a potentially jarring realization, is that the psychedelics are not putting a filter between the person and the reality. They are instead altering the way that the reality is being represented, or in essence, created by the brain. Again, this sounds logical, but really absorb the ramifications of it. Everything that you see, hear, smell, taste, and feel is not the actual object. It is the brain's projection of what might be the source of those sound waves, photons of light, or nerve signals. You are always, only, living in a world of the brain's own projection. So, what psychedelics do is alter the projector itself. Normally, the images that are being projected bear enough functional relevance to whatever unknowable reality exists outside of the body to allow the body to find what it needs to further its survival and the survival of its species. However, certain chemicals short circuit the mechanism that is constantly projecting these useful images of the world, so that the projector starts displaying scrambled images that may seem illogical given the context in which they arise. This is the proof that you are always living in a virtual reality world of the brain's own creation. It is like hacking into the circuitry of a digital film projector. You can create all sorts of glitches and strange distortions of the original source content, but they look just as convincing as the normal, well-functioning movie images were. Because again, none of them were ever actually real. All were illusions created by a play of light. The normal, predictable hallucinations that we have grown accustomed to are not the actual world. They are no more substantial or indicative of an external actuality than are the psychedelically derived ones. This is again not to say that there is nothing outside of the body. It's just that it remains a mystery because we can only ever interpret it based on the processing of electrical signals entering the brain. The world that we know, cling to, and expect to be a certain way is just as much of an hallucination, even when it is fully functional, as it is when you have taken a mind-altering substance. This can be proven to you directly by ingesting some exogenous chemical, but it can also be clear to you now. With appropriate attention placed on the senses, you can experience how thin this illusory substance of the world actually is. And then it becomes less serious, less substantial, less daunting. And it also undermines the idea that there is a you stuck somewhere inside of a body who is separate from all of the other appearances surrounding and overwhelming you day by day. Instead, it can be seen and realized that there is nothing separate from anything because it is all a hologram. The visual field is one unified projection, not a collection of individual objects. You know when you look at a painting that there is no object separate from the whole tableau. It is all made of paint. We can't just reach in and grab an apple off of a tree in a painted depiction of an orchard, no matter how lifelike it looks. And as counterintuitive as it seems, our visual display is, right now, just as unified. What is the visual field made of? It's not made of air and buildings and people. Take whatever you're looking at, relax, and allow the gaze to just move around the room. Let the eyes rest on one object and then another. Now, not using thought or memory to label what any object supposedly is, can you see that the visual appearance of a chair is not made of wood or cloth? The visual experience of a chair is not made of something different from the visual experience of a plant or of the sky that you can maybe see through the window. The sky itself, though our mind says that it is made of layers of transparent gases, is not any denser or less substantial than the wall or fireplace stones that you might be looking at. The visual field is not made of different materials. It is all one unified substrate. We can't really say what it is made of, but we know what it's not. It's not anything tangible or solid or three-dimensional or containing any inherent self nature. And when you realize that the visual field is not made of different substances representing discernible objects, it can become clear that there is no actual separation between anything. If the whole field is made of paint, then how can anything be separate from anything else? How do we make the arbitrary distinction of where one object begins and another ends? How can you discern the boundaries between flowers in a watercolor landscape? This investigation can also be done with each of our other senses. In the sound field, you can, of course, use all different sounds, noticing that a bird call is not made of some unique substance different from the roar of a tractor trailer thundering down the highway. We can also find that the scent of a lily is not made of a different substance from the scent of freshly baked muffins or traffic exhaust. And likewise, even the sensations of cold or heat in the body are not made of different materials. Even more, feelings of pressure, solidity, the various types of pain, temperature, hunger, nausea, and any other physical sense experiences are all made of the same unidentifiable substance. Now, even while finding in direct experience that there is no unique substance to each of our defined sensory experiences, we might still feel like there is a seer, hearer, feeler, taster, or smeller of these different sense fields. So let's investigate this next. Allow the mind and body to relax again. And in a state of calm detachment, let the eyes move to any part of the room that catches their attention. Do you notice that no matter where your eyes move, the entire visual field moves with it? In other words, imagine that you're sitting in a movie theater. You could turn your head to take in just the upper right corner of the screen. Then you could move your head to focus on just the center of the screen, and then turn again towards the lower left corner. You could shift that focus across the screen and even out to other parts of the theater that exist beyond the screen's boundary. This is an applicable metaphor because we have just been regarding our visual field like a kind of painting. Again, you aren't seeing a whole real world out there, but instead recognizing that absolutely everything is being displayed on a very close two-dimensional screen. If this is still eluding you, I would suggest to close one eye at a time. Does the illusion of depth disappear when you can only see through one lens? Very slowly open the second eye, and you will likely see a three dimensionality being created, much like when a stereogram or a magic eye picture suddenly pops off the page. Try it again to get a feel for this shift where the brain instantly imposes a rather holographic third dimension over the flat image. Another trick is to keep the eyes gently focused on a wall about 4 feet or 1.5 meters away. Make sure the eyes don't feel like they're straining. And then instead of just widening the gaze out to the periphery at the sides of the visual field, extend it up and down to the top and bottom of the visual field. So we are still focused on one spot directly in front of us, but we are expanding the view vertically to perceive the full height of the visual space. Relax here and see if this move alone is enough to bring the visual plane closer. I would recommend as we are going through the following exercises to take in the full height and width of the visual display. Once again, keeping the head pointed straight ahead while allowing the eyes to freely drift across the room. Notice that the visual field is still the same sized screen that seems to be moving from left to right and up and down. You might find that the screen looks larger with the eyes pointed straight ahead because when they are far to the left or right, a small part of the visual field might be obstructed by the side of the nose, the eyelids, or ocular cavity in the skull. This is fine. Still, the size of the screen does not change as the eyes move. They might just include an obstructing object. If you wear glasses, I recommend removing them as you do these exercises to get the full effect. The next thing that I would like for you to notice is as the eyes move to the left, does it feel like you are still facing straight ahead while the visual field seems to be appearing on the left side of the body? Not only is it pointing westward at a sharp angle, but does it seem that the visual field has itself moved to take up 1/2 of your perceptual reality? Isn't this curious? Are you actually seeing only 1/2 of the visual field? What is providing this illusion? Feel into the body and notice that there are physical sensations that are affirming the fact that you are sitting or standing here, facing in one direction. And we can feel that the head is pointed the same way as the torso. So we know that we must be looking straight ahead. But we also feel tension around the eyes that seem to be forcibly skewed to the left. So a comparison is happening. The body seems to be pointed one way, but the eyes feel like they're pointing somewhere else. And the conclusion that is made is that the visual field must be representing something to the left of the body. Try this again to the right side. Again, feel the sensations in the torso and the head that seem to be affirming the direction you should be seeing. And then turning your eyes sharply to the right, feel how all of the physical clues are pointing to you seeing something on your right. Relax the eyes and let them come back to the center. Have you noticed that the visual field has not changed or diminished at all as you've moved your eyes or head around? It is a full visual field that is appearing with a different set of information as the eyes or head moves, but the screen's size and location do not actually change at all. It's very much like a movie screen that is showing first a scene of an old farmhouse, and then a scene of outer space, and then a scene of the desert. The screen has not changed locations or size or texture or substance. Only its apparent contents have changed. Now keep your eyes gently pointing forward and begin moving the whole head from side to side and up and down. Notice that no matter where your head moves, the screen size never changes, merely its contents. And notice how it is immediately assumed that the screen is itself moving left to right, up and down. But is it? Is it like the screen of your vision is a virtual reality headset that is locked directly in front of your eyes and goes wherever they point? In other words, does the screen actually move, or are you simply receiving clues from other bodily regions that indicate that there is a part of the body which is stable and pointed in one direction, and that the eyes are pointing in another? Let the head gently sway in all directions, keeping the eyes pointed in the same direction as the head. Don't be tense or forceful. Just allow the gaze to be part of the movements of the head. Now, if it seems like when the head is facing to the left, that the visual screen is actually appearing on the left, and when it's pointing straight up, that the visual screen is pointing straight up, I would like for you to relax the body and the mind. With a light, diffuse gaze, keep drifting the head around your space and place your attention on the entirety of the visual field, letting the bodily sensations drift into the background. Take in the whole of the visual screen as you might attempt to take in the whole of a movie screen. But even as the head keeps moving, and even as the contents of the visual field keep changing, notice that the movements of the head and the visual screen itself are not connected. You might feel the muscles in the head and neck moving, and you might have a sense that the head is pointing this direction and now another. But keep your focus on the totality of the visual field and recognize that the screen is ever present. The content changes, but the screen is simply a unified display with nothing behind it. And no part of it that is made of anything different from the rest. No region of it is any closer to you or further away than another. There is no way to escape the visual field, even with eyes closed. You are still seeing it just as close and just as big. It is always here. Then our next question might be, who is viewing this screen? This is the often unaddressed assumption coloring all of our experiences. If there was really a you who was situated in the middle of the head behind the eyes, taking it all in, then shouldn't it be able to view discrete sections of the visual field the same way that a person in a movie theater could focus on discrete sections of the movie screen? Keeping the head still and gazing straight ahead, try right now, without moving your eyes, to focus only on the upper left hand corner of your visual field. Now, again, without moving the eyes, try focusing on the lower right corner of the field. You might have a bit more awareness of this region than you did when you were focused on the center of the vision, but the visual field does not change. You can't independently sweep across the visual field without moving the head or eyes. And can you see then that there is nothing or no one who is separate from the visual field, who can independently navigate awareness across the plane of the visual field? It is simply all that there is. Once more, hold your head straight and turn your eyes to the right. While this is happening, do you feel like you are then only seeing half of the visual field? Like you are missing everything to the left? Raise your left hand and wave it around. You can't see it, can you? Does this feel like it confirms that you are missing half of the visual field? Relax the eyes and move them again to the left side. Does it even seem that you are seeing a darkness encompassing the whole right side of the screen? If so, check in with your experience. Keeping your eyes pointed to the left, raise your right hand and wave it around. You still can't see it, right? So, what is appearing where the waving hand should be? Is it darkness? That's perhaps your initial assumption, but pay closer attention to it. Do you really see half of an image of color and shape and half an image of darkness? I bet you don't. It's not darkness. So, what is it? Is there anything there? If it at first seems like there is darkness, It is simply a mental overlay that the brain is using as a placeholder for something it can't comprehend. Keep holding your attention on it while looking to the side. It is not darkness, which would be the absence of light. Instead, it is the absence of anything. It is something we can't wrap our minds around because it is properly nothing at all. Not the nothing that we usually visualize as a black void, but truly the absence of anything. In fact, it's even the absence of absence. Bring your eyes back to the center and gently gaze straight ahead. Does it seem that there is this same darkness behind you? Is it really? Holding attention on it, do you see that this space, making up the rear 180 degrees of your experience, is nothing more than that same absenceless absence where nothing is present and yet nothing is missing? Where does the visual field end? Is it actually only taking up the front half of the sphere of your personal bubble? If there is truly no you or anything that can be found behind the visual field, then is there anything else to compare it to? Is there anything separate from the visual field? Where can you find something that is the opposite of the visual field? We can see a landscape and imagine that there must be the absence of a landscape. But where does that exist in your direct experience? To say that there is anything separate from the visual field is a creation of the imagination. This is non duality, the absolute collapse of separation, because there is nothing that could be separate from it. There is no opposite of the visual field, just like there is nothing opposite of the sound field, or the taste field, or the scent field, or the field of physical sensation. They are all appearing in their totality with nothing behind, in front of, to the side of, on top of, below, or in any way detached from them. They each make up the full and complete experience of each sense field. To believe that there is anything other than this completeness is to not only make something out of nothing, but to make absence out of nothing. Even the individual sense fields themselves can be felt as unified because they all share the same source, the same projector. They are all just twinkling elements of the same holographic display. This realization is one that dissolves the concept of inside and outside, all of it. When we are standing there, looking at the supposed sky and oceans, sun and moon, people and rainforests, cities and vehicles, all of them are being immediately represented by projections that are happening in the very same space where all of the memories and mental images of those things that I just listed are being projected. Hearing them named, I assume you just created mental representations of them, and that those representations appear in exactly the same place as they would if you had been standing at the edge of a beach or in the middle of a city. Any judgments about them or collected facts that immediately sprung to mind were likewise all being projected in the same space that is somehow neither internal nor external. Again, you are never seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, or touching the actual things. You are experiencing your projections of them. And these projections all appear not out there or in here, but in this same non locatable space. We overlook this fact countless times a day. But if we remain absolutely present with the raw senses, we can experience the facades start to break down. The overlays of expectation and assumption color and make substantial what is otherwise fresh, fleeting, and lacking in solidity. We assume into existence all manner of things that have no inherent beingness. There is simply a constantly changing display, which is being taken as everything in the universe. And there need not be any identification with the elements present here. There is no you who is the projector, or who is the screen on which the light dances. There is no you in the projections of physical sensations, or even in the sound of voices narrating behavior. There is no place for that concept of a you to remain. Even that non locatable space has no identity or inherent realness. There is no place for identification to hide. And there is absolutely no need for it from this vantage point. Absolutely everything exists, as it always has. There is just nothing separate from it, and no one to lay claim on any aspect or discrete appearance that occurs in it. So relax any assumptions and expectations. and begin allowing the individual sense fields to shift, to show themselves as the insubstantial and fleeting appearances that they have always been. Let the sense fields unify, dissolving the individual nature you once assumed them to have. Let them melt into this one ever changing projection that the mind shatters and interprets as five discrete senses. Relax all striving, wanting for things to be a certain way, creating problems where there are none. Relax the judging that any given appearance is not perfect on its own. And relax the clinging for perpetual existence. One sense appearance does not seem to lead to another. Even continuity of moments can begin to fall away. Hold on to nothing and feel the freedom that needs no definition. The display will show its illusory nature if it is no longer fortified by the cravings and fears of a mind struggling to maintain control. If there is nothing but this unified, ever refreshing display, what is there to be clung to or controlled? And by whom?